What is up, boys? Happy to be back for another edition of the Blind Pig Podcast, courtesy of bgobsession.com. Please hook us up with a like, share, and a follow. If you've been here before, you know the drill, but if you're new here, find us on all major audio podcast platforms, as well as watch along on YouTube. On socials, you can find us on Twitter and Facebook, and as always, you can mix it up with us on bgobsession.com.
And if you are new here, where the hell have you been?
That's right. Absolutely. All right, boys, now that we got the particulars out of the way, about 24 hours ago, the schedule was released. But before we dive into that, a couple quick camp notes. We did sign Demarius Byrd, not thinking that that's some major development, but it's an interesting another weapon in the wide receiver room. I think at a minimum, it tells you guys like Mitch Tinsley and Dyami Brown and some of those back of the roster depth guys aren't safe. Other
Yami
than
needs
that,
to stop running into our starting running back in practice.
that's true.
You heard that, right? He and Diami like ran into each other in one of the first plays of 7-on-7s or something. Knocked each other down.
We also released Jake Fromm. That was another big move.
Yep, Jake Fromm released.
Move, but
we hardly knew you.
Just to put it out there, I mean, have you guys been following along with this Sam Hartman thing? I'm wondering if he is not our third quarterback on the roster this year.
I think he is. I think he is. As soon as they signed him to real money, right, to come in as an undrafted.
He's just on looks alone. I think he rates, that third spot.
Which means, what does he do? Supplant Driscoll? Like at the end of preseason, is Driscoll the cut, and then Hartman is in the final 53, but he's in an inactive every weekend, except he's the emergency quarterback?
That could well work. If Hartman's not developed enough to even be the 3, he goes on the taxi squad, right? Or the practice
squad. Yeah.
I don't think we're going to carry 3 quarterbacks on the active roster. I mean, why would we? I think that's more of I know we used to do that a lot, but I think it seems like a lot of NFL teams have gotten away from that because there's really
isn't there the COVID rule now where you can have a third emergency quarterback that is not counting against your
I believe is 100% correct. Yeah, right? We'll post the thing to it tomorrow, but yes, you are correct.
Okay. One other little nugget. I did hear that there have been trade, and this is just rumor mill, but I've heard there's been trade talks with the Dolphins, and I've heard both Dyami Brown and John Allen's name involved. John Allen, literally 5 hours ago, John Allen reaffirming his commitment to the Commanders and Dan Quinn amid recent speculation of a summer trade to the Dolphins. And then they follow that quote with, "To be honest, he's probably so locked in he hasn't even heard of the rumors." But if we could flip Dyami Brown for like a 6th-round pick, do you do that? I mean, I would imagine you do, because I don't even know that he's going to make it out of camp. So at that point, if you can get something for him, right?
I think the whole thing with Brown was his relationship with Howell and the hype around that, like there's some special relationship connection. But let's be honest, even with that history, he didn't play well, and all he really showed us is that he's pretty fast. So pretty fast wide receiver, doesn't run great routes, can't get open consistently, and can't catch the ball. I mean, and maybe a lot of that was coaching in the situation. I don't know the guy, but I just don't think he's got much of a future. I think he's going to be one of those late cuts
I agree with that. I think they're going to want to look at some of the young kids. Luke McCaffrey's there, right? He might even be wide receiver 3. I mean, heading in.
Might be.
So John's not going anywhere. They're going to want to keep looking at Kaz Allen. They're going to want to keep looking at Tinsley based on his performance last year early, right, in preseason. And somebody I was just listening to was talking about this Marcus Rosemy Jack Saint, who is like he's a big dude with athletic skills, and they're going to want to see if he can play too. So no, I think Diami's days are numbered. I'd be really surprised if he's on the team by opening day.
All right, boys. Well, the biggest thing on the docket tonight's going to be the schedule. I've got a couple of notes. I'm curious if you guys reviewed the schedule. What jumped off the page at you, if anything?
I'll just throw a couple things out there. I don't think it's that tough of a schedule. I mean, a lot of it may ride on like how Philly and Dallas play, which you never know, and the Giants for that matter, but you never know. I think we're the consensus is the Giants aren't going to be very good. Philly looked pretty weak down the stretch last season. They had all that coaching turnover, and Dallas is kind of all over the place. So setting aside the NFC East, which is impossible to predict from year to year, I mean, the games that looked super tough to me were like at Cincy on Monday Night Football and at the Ravens, which is always going to be tough, although it might be a little bit less tough since they lost their defensive coordinator. But I mean, I know Galdi said this morning that according to Warren Sharp of Sharp Football Analysis, who does his projection based on the Vegas odds, not like last season, we have the 13th hardest schedule. But the same guy predicted last season that we had the 6th hardest schedule, and we ended up having like the 6th easiest schedule by the end of the year, according to DVOA and other stuff. So I just think it's impossible to predict how hard or easy the schedule is going to be going into the season, because 2 or 3 teams might totally flip one way or the other, that you thought were going to be really tough games, but then they lose their quarterback and they fall apart. And then some other teams like the Texans last year spring up that maybe you weren't expecting.
Well, the other thing is it's not necessarily who you play, but it's when you play them.
Right.
Yeah. Games that jump off the page to me are Atlanta week, literally the second to last game of the season. What's Kirk Cousins' status going to be in that game?
I'm so glad that's here. I can't wait to see.
Yeah, exactly.
What's going to happen. I'm making the prediction now. He's going to throw a pick in the 4th quarter, and the loudest cheers of the season are going to be, "You like that?" And it's going to be deafening.
It's too poetic. Yeah, absolutely.
That's my bold prediction for the season right there.
Put it out there in the universe, man. Make it so.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I didn't mean to cut John off either, but on my first impression is it's so funny because it all has to do with what you're looking at and what your expectations for your own team are. I don't know about you guys, but I have absolutely no idea what our team's going to look like at the beginning. I suspect, however they look at the beginning, I'd like to think they'll be better at the end, but we have no idea. We might actually be good. We might just be awful for a while we try to figure out all the new systems and guys learn each other's names. So I think if I'm on the team, if I'm a player on this team, all I'm really looking at is who do we open against? Maybe who's our first home game? I'm not looking beyond that because we're going to be figuring out who we are. The NFL is going to be trying to figure out who we are. But like with the Buccaneers, they are not the same team they were at the end of last year. They lost their D coordinator, right? He's a head coach now. The Giants lost Wink Martindale, and he's been bitch slapping our team for the last couple of years. So we don't know what those teams are going to look like. They got new things going on. They have no idea what we're going to look like. So I'm just looking at this for intriguing matchups. I love the idea of going up to Cincinnati to play on Monday night with absolutely no expectations. We're playing with house money that night. Joe Burrow may or may not be Joe Burrow yet. His hand is still hurt, right? We haven't seen him play. So who knows what these games are going to look like. I'm kind of just looking forward this year to seeing us test ourselves against good teams, not so good teams, just to see who we are as we go into this. This is one of the more, for me, pressure-free schedule releases I've ever seen. I never went through and started trying to find W's this time, and I've always done that. Always done that.
Yeah, it's even though despite what I said about I don't think I think we've had much tougher schedules, at least based on what we know, which is not a lot about how these teams are going to play. But I mean, you can't possibly have any more change than we've had if any NFL team. And I would even say like teams where they blow it up and start over, they usually don't blow up half the roster. Like usually that first season is a little bit more conservative. We've pretty much blown up half the roster, and we may not be done blowing it up yet. So between that and all the new coaches and the new schemes and a rookie quarterback, I mean, that's about as uncertain. I mean, it could go either way. It wouldn't surprise me if we won 10 games and snuck in the playoffs somehow. I think the fact that nobody knows a thing of, I mean, we don't even know what kind of offense we're going to run, what kind of
Exactly.
going to run. So that maybe to a small extent, it might help us a little bit, at least for the first quarter or third of the season or so. But one thing we know, because I looked at, and I apologize because I didn't write down where I saw this other than it was on X. We're only favored as of today in 3 games. And according to the current Vegas odds, home against the Giants, home against the Panthers, and home against the Titans. We're dogs in every other game, including every other NFC game except for the home Giants game. So that tells you that Vegas is not super optimistic on our chances.
Or the old Vegas thing, right? That tells us that they know where the betting public is at on us right now.
Right. Well, and again, that they're not going to make us favorites because they're expecting a lot of money to be going against us.
Yep.
But and to be fair, you guys you've touched on it a little bit. New head coach, new offense, new defense. 47% of the roster is going to be new, which means you can probably get of the 11 starters that start week 1, 11 of them are going to have not touched, donning a new helmet this year. And then on top of that, a rookie quarterback, still questions along the offensive line. 2 of the 5 starters on the O-line are new. There's a lot of things that make it reasonable. I don't want to even say work against us, but make it reasonable to believe that we need to be patient and that the expectations should be at a certain level. Couple notes. I did write some notes down when I looked at the schedule. 3 of the first 4 games are away. And that extends 4 of the first 6 are away. Including a Monday night game and a 4:00 game. We have 2 4:00 games this year. We had none last year. We have 2 primetime games this year with 2 more TBDs, and I think we only had 1 or 2. No, we might not have had any. We had no primetime home games last year. And then there's a stretch during the middle of the season that runs from October 6th to December 1st, where we have 9 games and 6 of them are at home. So it's like we're going to see a run of away games, and then we're going to see a long run of home games, which is kind of odd that we open and close the season on the road, but we have more home games than road games this year. Which just kind of, I would have bet that we started or ended at home just simply because of that fact.
I always get the feeling that the giant supercomputer that comes up with the NFL schedule, whether it's because of like where we sit in the hierarchy of good teams in the NFL, or whether it's because we start with a W, it's kind of like the Commanders get whatever's left.
Right.
Like, okay, we'll just plug the Commanders in here. That's how we ended up with like the all NFC East final quarter of the season,
I think that's true in that if you're trying to get featured games with the teams that the public's going to want to see in all the best spots, you don't start with Washington, right? You earn your way to that.
Like the Jets have 6 primetime games. There's no fucking way the Jets. I know, I get it. I understand why. But
it's in the first 11 weeks too.
Yeah, there's no rational
It's insane.
reason for that. It's insane.
That's also not an advantage. Why would you want that as a team? Those games are hard. You don't get a sked, you don't get your routine.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare for the team.
There's a couple of anomalies, like in beyond expanding beyond just us, the Christmas teams. There's 4 teams playing on Christmas, which is a Wednesday. So if you look at their schedules, those 4 teams also play each other the Saturday before that. So there's 4 teams that are going to be playing 3 games in the span of 10 days in December. The 15th, Sunday the 15th, Saturday the 21st, and then Wednesday the 25th, which is just, I guess, it's fair because it means that none of those teams have a competitive advantage because they're all working on the same schedule. But at the same time, that is brutal, to try to swing that. We saw how hard that was during the COVID year when we had that weird Monday game against the Steelers, and then it just kind of worked out. That it was an oddity. I'm
One thing that I thought was interesting that Galdi talked about this morning is that we are not playing a ton of teams with like true top-notch quarterbacks or star quarterbacks, top 5 quarterbacks.
mhm.
But looking at the quarterbacks that we face, Burrow obviously, but again, Mark brought up we play them early and we don't know what he's going to be like. Lamar Jackson, I'd put in that category. Cousins, I'd probably grudgingly put in that category as at least being a guy that can, on a good day, can pick you apart. And then Hurts and Prescott, but again, depends on which one of those guys you get on a given day. But the rest of the guys are just kind of like middle tier, the Kyler
So
Murray, the Baker Mayfields, and those kind of guys.
I'm so glad you brought that up because the only research that I turned my crack research team on this week for this podcast was about the quarterback thing, and then I heard Al talking about it this morning on his pod too. So I felt vindicated. So you already touched, John, on who we're facing, and I'll run through this real quick. Mayfield, Daniel Jones, Joe Burrow. I put a star next to him. Kyler Murray, I didn't put a star next to him. Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, he gets a star for sure. Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, Daniel Jones again, either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. Jalen Hurts, some bitch gets a star for me. Will Levis, no. Derek Carr, no, not anymore. Kirk Cousins, half a star. And Dak Prescott, he probably deserves half a star too. So whatever, 4, maybe 5 guys. Bigger story to me is who we're not facing in 2024. We are not facing Mahomes, Rodgers, Herbert, Allen, Lawrence, Goff, Stafford, Stroud, Tagovailoa. Those are 8 guys that I would put stars next to, probably.
Yeah.
We're not facing those
I think
guys.
Derek Carr on a good day is a very good quarterback. He's an underrated quarterback, but I agree with you. And I will say this, when you said Justin Fields, I broke out into a little rash because I remember us talking about Justin Fields last year.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And we made him look like Joe
But I think that said more about us than it did
I
about
know.
Justin Fields, right? That's why he's in Chicago
Still
now
traumatized.
or Pittsburgh now. But yeah, we're not facing a gauntlet of all the best passers in the NFL. So if our defense is even in the mid-teens, we got a chance to be pretty competitive in almost all of these games.
So we always hear the hype about the bye week, and we have gotten screwed quite a bit on the bye week, although it seems like usually it's because we're getting it like in week 7. That seems to be like what I recall in the last 10 years.
Right, it's like early or late.
Right. But I don't really think a bye week in week 14 is a bad thing. The reason we think it's a bad thing is because we're never like on the cusp of the playoffs, like getting ready to make our last final push. We might be hoping for that, but the truth is we're just fading down the stretch. And so we're just like, oh, we could have used this a lot sooner. But I think most really good teams wouldn't mind a bye week, like in that time frame to get healthy.
If you're competitive, that's the best bye week you can get. Give it to me at
That's
the
what
end
I
of the
think.
year so we can try to
But people talk
vault
like
our
it's
way
a
into the playoffs.
people talk like it's some, disaster.
Yeah, I've never understood that. To me, if I'm a coach, I want it in week 14 or 15 or 16 when everybody's hurt. Give me a week to get everyone in the training room. I don't
Mhm.
understand. Maybe I'm missing something, but I don't understand why people get exercised that it's late.
So we've kind of touched a little bit on the big names. I'm kind of surprised that the Bears game wasn't earlier in the season. I thought the NFL was going to try to piggyback on that, maybe that early hype. Because for all we know, that Washington and Chicago could have a combined 5 wins by the time we play in week 8. I don't think that's unrealistic, and then that game is not going to be anywhere near what it thought.
Or we could have the 2 offensive rookie of the year
Right, candidates, right,
going
exactly.
at each other.
Kyler week 4, because that guy could randomly just decide he's going to win the football game. But
We got a secret weapon on that front. We
he's
got the
also
guy.
got a ton of weapons. Or did they just drafted Harrison, right?
We got the guy that taught him how to play pro football on our staff. So
Kyler's going to run around, right? He's going to run around and make plays, but he's going to have to, if you keep him in the pocket and make him be a quarterback, you can beat him.
We also have a middle linebacker that's been scouting that guy twice a year for 4 years, right? And Bobby Wagner. By the way, not to go on another tangent, but did you hear what Bobby Wagner said on Kay Adams' show today? The clip came out. She legit asked him, what's your motivation? He goes, I'm chasing a ring. He said he came here to chase a ring. And he also said he had a relationship with Dan Quinn, that they've been trying to get connected since the Seattle days. And then that the front office in Dallas just never actually was able to pull the trigger. And he said it's basically a dream come true to come play for him and for Ken Norton Jr. Sorry.
Yeah, I did hear the part where he said it wasn't just Quinn, like it was the whole staff that like blew him away.
How long has it been since that has happened? Where we're a destination as opposed to a.
And then you've got Sam Cosmi coming out and after practice saying Bobby Wagner is calling him out, telling him, "Hey man, I know what you're going to do."
He said before the snap, he said he's pulling. He's like, how'd you know I was doing that?
He said, Cosmi said I was like doing my best to totally disguise it, and he read me like the back of his hand.
Doesn't that just shine such a bright light on how poorly organized and run we've been? Stories like this happen on good teams, right? All the time.
All the time.
Oh, they asked Cosmi. They flat out asked him, Mark. They said something like, "Is the coaching, like, is the whole vibe and the coaching different?"
I heard him. I heard his answer.
He's like, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you could tell he didn't really want to say it, but he's like, yeah, kind of.
Well, I love that Wagner said that. Wagner's also going to be 34 at the end of June. So if he wants to win a ring here, they better get a move on.
Well, he also made mention to London Fletcher. He's like, you've seen.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what I was getting ready to say. That's who he is.
He literally said London Fletcher came here when he was my age, and he ended up playing like 4 or 5 more good years. So
bring it on. Bring it on.
I just want to make note that no name change discussions were had during the making of this podcast, and nor will they be.
Right? Yeah. That we talked a little bit about before the podcast. I think we're gonna reserve that conversation for when there's something substantial.
Right. We'll talk about it when there's something to talk about. Right.
Yeah, I think I can speak for you two and say that if the logo were to come back, that would be freaking awesome. I would embrace it. I would love it. John's literally wearing it on his hat that he's got on his head right now. It's posted everywhere. But at the same time, let's see what happens before we start getting real into it. But
my real purpose is there's about a 98% chance that if we did talk about it, I'm going to show my ass in a big way because I have such strong feelings about it. So I what do they say? If nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve. That's my position right now.
Well, fellas, there's not much else to talk about. The schedule was a big thing. I don't think we're gonna do the cheesy thing and start trying to predict, records or anything. I'm curious. There was a thing on Twitter. They said realistic wins. Let's not pick games, but realistic expectations. I personally said 7 is realistic, 6 is possible. If everything were to go right, and Mark just left. He must have hated that conversation. If everything were to go right, I could see 10, but I'm not saying that's realistic. What's your vibe, John? Not to go too deep. I'm not going to say call out wins and losses, but what do you think is a realistic win total for this year?
No, I think 7 wins can happen. I think it could more than that could happen, but I don't think it's unrealistic to. I don't know how we would. We even with bad Washington teams with questionable coaching, we've managed to usually win 4 to 5 games in almost every season for the last 20 years.
Well,
So I think with really good coaching, and I think the irony is all the turnover we've had, we've actually improved our talent, like considerably our talent. So I think 7, that would be my basement. I think it would be disappointing if we didn't win at least 7, put it that way.
well, and beyond that, we could lose 2 or 3 games early just because of what we've talked about. New offense, new defense, new
I think,
rookie quarterback. Such a turnover in the roster. All of that, we could lose games that we are theoretically should win because of
I
it
think we're
doesn't
going to
just
be
come
tougher in the NFC East than we've been in a while because I think
right.
we've got coaches that understand the NFC East. I think definitely we have an edge against Dallas that we haven't had with all the experience and just that those games are going to mean a lot to the coaching staff. So I think that could be what gets us over the hump up to close to 500 is that we're a lot more competitive in the NFC East than we have been because lately
Yeah,
it's scary.
and I am truly excited to see what this coaching staff does with you know Jayden Daniels in their ability to adapt Jayden Daniels to be an effective player early and then evolve him. You know what I mean? And not necessarily square peg round hole like we've seen in the past where it's this is our scheme and you need to fit into it. So
And I think what Mark said, and we'll let Mark speak to like what the basement is on the win total. But I think what Mark said is that what do we have to lose in this first season?
right.
I could see us really being pretty aggressive, which maybe that's counterintuitive when you got a lot of change and a lot of new players and coaches. But hell, there's no pressure on us. No one, not even not even homeristic fans like us are gonna expect, anything crazy in this first season. So what do you think, Mark? What's a realistic win total?
You're talking win totals?
I'm not saying we weren't saying go game by game, but just
Yeah.
it was posed on Twitter. What's a realistic expectation?
No, and I think any fan does that, right? I of course I did it. I think nothing's changed for me since the schedule actually came out. So I will just answer the same way I would have answered that question 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think just based on the roster that we're watching them put together and the coaching staff, this seems like a 500 level team to me. That's got that kind of potential. Which when you say 500 these days, if you could do a ±2 on each, right? So that's 7 to 11 kind of team with one major asterisk. If Jayden Daniels can play, who the hell knows? No one saw the Texans coming last year. It took JC Stroud half a season, CJ Stroud, half a season to get his legs under him. And all of a sudden people are thinking, damn, that team's good. And they went from an afterthought to a legitimate playoff team in half a season. So can I see us doing that? Absolutely. If Jayden can play and he and Kingsbury are on the same page and everything else falls into place with what it looks like a pretty solid roster and solid coaching staff, ain't nothing going to surprise me this year.
And we saw it in 2012, and I'm not comparing to Jayden Daniels to RG3 in any way, but we saw it in 2012 when teams don't know what it is you're gonna do and what kind of schemes you're gonna run. We could see some stuff that the NFL hasn't seen in a while with Kingsbury calls plays, and it might involve, like you talked about last pod, Mark, it might involve a lot more involvement from our running backs than we saw last year.
I think we're going to see the training wheels version of our offense early. I think they're going to pound it as much as they can. They're going to go off play action, let Jayden run half a dozen controlled runs a game and see if they can play solid NFL football, both sides of the ball. I think the offense we'll see in week 16 against Philly ain't going to look much like what we see in week 1 against Tampa. I think it's going to be a major work in progress. but the other side ain't going to know what we're coming with. They're going to have
And
no idea.
I'll tell you what position group I don't want to say I'm most excited about, because I'm excited about a lot of them, but I cannot wait to see what we do with a decent tight end room, because we haven't had one in a long time. And even when we've had good tight ends like Jordan Reed, we haven't been able to build an offense around him. So I'm excited about that.
Or we've tried too hard to build an offense around a guy that, Jordan Reed was a game changer at tight end. The problem, and we built our offense to go through that guy.
Stay on the field. I mean, he just
and then he couldn't stay on the field, and then the offense was nuked because you didn't have nobody that could stand up to that.
And Logan Thomas wasn't as good as Jordan Reed, but
And Niles Paul was a converted wide receiver that, he couldn't do what Jordan Reed was doing. So,
And what do all three of those guys have in common? They don't block anybody.
right.
Yeah.
The guys we have now, Zach Ertz is a professional tight end. He'll
Yes.
help in the receiving game, and
he can still play. He can still
he will
play.
do his job in blocking. And from what we've seen from Ben Sinnott, we know Bates is a beast. He can block. Ben Sinnott, I'm really looking forward to watching him play, because he's a pretty good downfield type player with hands, but I think he looks like a tough son of a bitch inside too. So you're going to know, this is such a cliche, right? But you're going to know you've played this team. This is a big, physical, athletic team they're putting together. And that'll pay dividends if they can stay healthy and start playing as a team. Will be a tough out for people.
And I think I don't know how to speak for you guys, but that would make me as happy as anything. Then forget the one-off last-second field goal to scrape, but if we are literally just going in week and week out, we're competitive, we're fighting, it's hard-nosed, guys are, they're you see the sideline, the vibe is different, and guys are, even if we end the season with 6, 7, or 8 wins, that's not a lost season to me. There's a lot there. There's a lot of context in that beyond just like, oh, you're sub 500, you didn't qualify for the playoffs, but to be building the overall mentality and the overall community of this team going forward, so that there's multiple years of sustainability. And to make, you hope Bobby Wagner plays well enough that now he's on a 1-year deal. You bring him back for 3 more with an out after 2. And you look at guys like, who's not Allegretti, the other offensive lineman we signed to a 1-year deal. And you find guys there that the roster starts taking shape. And then we
talk
look
about
at
Biadasz
is our starting center. He's a 3-year deal. And I think Allegretti is too, but I think there was another guard. But you start looking at the 53-man roster, and if we enter 2025 and we start looking at, well, we've got 48 of the 53 locked down, and those other 5 are going to be game changers. Like that's exciting to me. That's almost more exciting than scraping out a 9-win season that doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, we have entire position groups, like I mentioned, the tight ends. We have like linebackers. We we have entire position groups that, like, it's not that we had bad players. We just really had nobody. So I think we're definitely, like, right out of the gate, as crazy as it is, we're a much more complete roster right now than we were for any of the last 3 seasons.
And I'm going to say it again, and I will keep beating this horse. Of course, I said a similar thing last year, but we're starting a young quarterback with this huge ceiling and potential to be something. We hoped that Sam Howell had that. I think a lot of us had doubts about it. We were willing to watch and happy to root for him, but I never felt the expectations I had for Howell are not even in the same ballpark as what I have for Jayden Daniels. If this kid we haven't had a guy like this. Really, I can't remember that we've had a guy like this ever in my lifetime of watching the team, with the high end and the potential of what he could be. We've never had him. We had Sammy Baugh once, right? But
the thing that really gets me excited, Mark, because you can't believe anything leading into the draft. There's so much hype around it. But just hearing what all the people that have been around him and the current coaching staff are saying about his work ethic, I think it's real. I think he has that same kind of thing that Mahomes had, which is no one's going to outwork him, no one's going to outstudy him. I think he's got that, and we've never. I don't know. Again, I don't know when we've had a quarterback that was super gifted and had that.
Well,
And right,
and also
right.
has a kind of a an understanding of self. You know what I mean? Like one of the greatest answers I've ever, and I'm fanboying it up. Look, I'm not gonna lie, Jayden Daniels wasn't my choice, but he's my quarterback now. I'm fully admit that. I'm gonna root for him. He's gonna say things and I'm gonna get excited about it. But in his presser, they said, you know, do you think are you ready to be a starter? And he literally looked a reporter in the face and said, I haven't even gotten the playbook yet. How can I say I'm ready to be a starter? You know what I mean? Just the wherewithal to be able to have that kind of a response as opposed to, yeah, I'm good enough to be a starter. You know, like
Just the fact that he knows what the right vanilla,
right,
not going to get me into hot water answer is, because we've had a lot of guys that couldn't even figure that out. Forget actually saying the right thing;
right.
they couldn't even determine what the right thing might be. He's definitely savvier than I probably gave him credit for when we drafted him.
Mhm.
I've seen so far.
Well, there's a reason that Adam Peters, right? We started this off season celebrating that we were going to finally have a professional general manager, and this guy happened to be the most sought after, blah, blah, blah. This guy could not have been more excited about Jayden Daniels. That says a lot more to me than me being excited about him. If they're all dead wrong, they're all dead wrong, and who knows? But right now,
And
I'm,
we will all go down together.
I can't wait to see the kid. I can't wait to see the kid in some live scrimmage situations. We'll start hearing the buzz early. If he's getting out there and mixing it up and performing in practice, word will get out.
Well,
It'll also get out if he doesn't.
the other thing that I think is kind of cool is if you look at the schedule, our preseason, we have Jets, Dolphins, and Patriots.
How cool is
So,
that?
huh?
How cool is that? I love that.
I wonder if we don't have two of those 3 weeks with joint practices leading up to them. You know, like if
Maybe.
if we don't see a Jets and pre Jets week and pre Patriots week where it's joint practices and you're seeing live fire against somebody wearing a different color jersey. I mean, if I'm Dan Quinn, I'm going for it, and that's what I would be pushing for. Is I'd be on the phone with these guys already. Like, let's set up joint practices, let's put it together, because all three of those teams. I mean, the Jets have Aaron Rodgers coming off an injury. The Dolphins are going to be trying to prove that they're not just the regular season Cinderella, the Capitals of the 2000s, and the Patriots are first year head coach Gerard Mayo with a brand new quarterback. Let's get as much exposure for these boys as we can get.
If we see Aaron Rodgers in preseason, I will eat this hat.
No, but that's what I mean. The joint practices. These are the opportunities.
I'm sorry. You're right. Yeah. I'm with you on that. I'm
Like
with you on
let's
that.
the more they can get him. Obviously, he's not going to play in a preseason game, but the more they can get him live reps in a joint practice would just be beneficial to them, or at least you could present it that way.
Exciting times, my friends.
Yeah.
Yep.
I almost feel like we have to reset it every couple of weeks, right? Think about where we were 18 months ago and look at where we are now and what we're talking about and the team that's getting ready to go on the field and all that.
We
I
we were
am not
running
losing
podcasts talking about could Dan Snyder actually sell the team?
and fooling ourselves that we might still field a competitive team if, as long as he was here.
Right.
And here we are. It didn't take very long. And now we're sweating a little bit about can our new draft pick, play left tackle and we're worried about football things. I just love it.
Oh, it's all football things. There's none of the drama. There's none of
Just
the
love it.
knock on wood. The most scandalous off the field drama was the fact that Dan Quinn wore a shirt that had a feather on the W and everybody lost their freaking mind about it. Like that's the biggest thing going on right now. That and, you know, what we talked about with the name change that Bob said or John said we're not going to get into,
Yeah,
but
that Dan Quinn thing, that was pure knucklehead. That was like, I know that all the conspiracy theorists out there want to like make some big thing about it. That was a guy that's like, hey man, my neighbor gave me this shirt. It's pretty
And
fucking
it looks cool, and I like the past, and yeah,
That's about as much thought as went into that.
right. All right, fellas.
Clearly, you don't believe in Bigfoot, my friend.
Oh, I do believe in Bigfoot, just not,
Oh, okay. All right.
Just not in Ashburn.
Yeah.
Right.
All right,
All right.
boys. This was
Well,
fun.
if you hung with us this long, we appreciate you. Of course, like we said at the top, give us a like, a share, or a follow. Hook us up on all the audio platforms. Catch us up on Facebook, Twitter, and absolutely, please join bgobsession.com. The more the merrier. We enjoy having fans. And with no more than that, we'll catch up next week, fellas.
All right, guys.
Peace.
Peace.